let us just kindly just take your time to fill in those 3 questions so that we can be able to proceed with no waste of time. Thank you. Really, more and more people are joining us on board. So thank you so much for taking your time. Kindly fill in the 3 questions. Is HCERM, Enterprise Risk Management, a new human resource tool? Number 2, should HR professionals become more engaged in risk management? And number 3, can you run enterprise risk management in GRC, that is corporate governance, risk, and compliance separately? Let us know your take on the 3 questions right away. Thank you so much for taking your time. All right, so far we have, on the first question, we have at least 42% who have said enterprise risk management is a new human resource tool. And 25% have said it's not actually a new resource tool. And then people who are not sure are 33%. So right away, I will start with the first question, which we asked. Can you, so is HCERM a new resource tool? Actually, the answer is no. It is the HR focus on risk that is high on organizations' agendas today. Actually, it's not a new tool. And then the second question, let me check, which was, should HR professionals become more engaged in risk management? All of us said yes, which is true. And then the third question, can you run enterprise risk management and corporate governance and risk and compliance separately? We have 33% who said yes, 29% said no, and then 38% said you're not sure. All right, so the answer, should HR professionals become more engaged in risk management? The answer is they already are always and have been today. It has actually sharpened focus from the human capital perspective. Like for example, COVID-19, which is a human risk factor that can decimate any organization from top to bottom actually. So for example, succession planning has never been more important as has multi-skilling. And then can you run HCERM separately? No, because risk and management of the human element is key in when it comes to running any successful business, be it public or separate. So thank you so much for all who have taken time to fill in the poll questions. I really appreciate that. So I think we can proceed. This webinar is organized by the ABMC International, that is Access Business Management International, and it's going to run for 1 hour, that is from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. So ABMC is an international affiliated business intelligence company that provides the organization with corporate learning and development solutions required by organization both regionally and internationally by meeting your day-to-day skills need to stay ahead of your competition. So the main objective today and discussion introduction to the full course on human capital enterprise risk management and HR adopting the risk management mindset. Risks begin and end with people. Does it make sense that organizations are realizing that to excel at risk management, HR leaders must play an important role? So ladies and gentlemen, according to a recent survey, the following trends are driving a great focus on human capital risk management in the HR organizations. That is, black swans are becoming less rare. Number 2, people risks make headline news. The view of human capital risk is expanding and also the regulation is increasing. So this webinar will be discussing on the 10 modules of human capital enterprise risk management, and it's hosted by ABMC International. Our lead facilitator and expert is called Dr. Michael Robbins. So Michael is currently a managing director for the CRD UK, that is an international business consultancy based in Europe, partnering with Aegon in South Africa. He has worked as a senior business consultant for several European and South African business consulting organizations. Michael was, until joining CRD UK International, was ahead of corporate risk globally for a leading South African risk management company that is based in the UK. And is a graduate of Manchester University with over 30 years of experience across all corporate disciplines. and has held the post of Director and General Manager and CEO of 2 major UK companies, 1 private and 1 quoted company. Michael was awarded his doctorate degree in the International Business Administration, Governance and Risk in Emerging Organizations in July 2005.
William, you make me sound very old.
Welcome, Michael. Welcome, Michael.
Well, good afternoon from what is frankly, quite a sunny autumn day in the UK. And welcome to Risk Awareness Week, which is an international focus on risk in the workplace. We're going to go through an extract from the ABMC 10-session course, which highlights HR risk management and addresses key post-COVID-19 issues that will affect all organizations and governments, and is affecting all organizations and governments worldwide. In today's business world, you cannot have a successful GRC program without integrating enterprise-wide risk management. It is, however, true to say that one size does not fit all, and we must take a sectoral view of risk-related activities that fall within HR's purview. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that during the 10 sessions. So this presentation is an extract from the online program content. In the past several years, large-scale events that were once thought unlikely or indeed isolated, such as the global liquidity crisis and subsequent country-by-country recessions, have manifested and changed the course of business for many organizations. Then came along COVID-19. Now, COVID-19 is what we call a grey rhino event, which the technical definition is coronavirus/SARS-CoV-2, would you believe? And this is what can be described in the jargon of today, as I say, as a grey rhino event. The definition, please, is this. A grey rhino event is an event of risk that is highly probable, with a high impact, but yet neglected. Grey rhino event is not random like a black swan event, but occurs after a series of warnings and visible evidence. SARS-CoV-1 from 2002 is an example, and I was in Hong Kong at the time when that was first brought to our attention. And both COVID-1 and COVID-2 emanate from the same geographical location, and of course CoV-2 is coronavirus C19. So to be clear, please, addressing the global pandemic today is also preparing for the future, because for sure a global crisis will happen again. May not be a pandemic, it may be financial, but for sure there will be another global crisis. So if I may, I'd like to quote Donald Rumsfeld, just to help us focus the mind when considering what we talk about today as the New World Order. So Donald Rumsfeld, if I may quote, says, "We know there are no knowns, there are things we know we know. We also know there are unknown unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. However, there are also unknown unknowns, the ones we do not know that we do not know. And that is what this impact of COVID-19 is really about. Because today, organizations, both public and private, around the whole world, are trying to come to terms with the impact of C19 and the impact it's having on capacity and capabilities. Organizations are revisiting and identifying their important business services that, if disrupted, and my apologies, could cause harm to consumers. Market integrity, even organization reputation, and of course, as we've seen across the world, the worst case scenario, total loss of capability. And may I draw your attention to airlines around the world as an example. So these major influencing factors have also brought the human factor of risk management into the spotlight, with a renewed interest in the influence on achievement of business objectives through people and their behaviour. In the world of business, we are living through a fundamental transformation in the way we work. These momentous changes raise huge organisational, talent and HR challenges. At a time when business leaders are already wrestling with unprecedented risks derived from COVID-19 disruption, political and societal upheaval. So they don't always have the focus on the issues that HR must take account of. So really what we want to look at perhaps is not just what's happening today, but also what that workforce of the future, and by future, I mean post-COVID-19. What that future workforce will be the result of a complex and competing forces that are continuing to evolve, because people risk lies at the heart of all of these forces. No exploration of the future of work will ever be conclusive. Indeed, one of the defining characteristics of our age is its ability to surprise and confound us. Increasingly, the need for HR attention to people risk and the risk-based workplace, whether that is in the company workplace or the home, or indeed an outsourced workplace, doesn't matter. Please, this is not about some future or far-flung future concept of work. Change to our workplace is already happening and accelerating due to the influence of COVID-19 and what organisations are beginning to understand as the new normal. Please, William, could you put up slide number 2, please? Now, slide number 2, you'll see, has a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it talks about you cannot spell hero without HR. And I believe that is true. I'll mention shortly, I had the privilege of working with hundreds of HR practitioners in South Africa when we were writing and devising the HR risk management standard. So I know exactly what HR has to work with, always the backbone. So human resource management, actually, I prefer people management. I find the human resource bit a bit plastic. HR has for many years been the compliance backbone of most organisations when it comes to legislation and people issues. However, today, HR must become, indeed if it is not already, the leader for your organisation behind your organisation's people journey post-COVID-19. This ACBF 10-session programme will address the key risk issues facing HR today in what, as I've said, we now call the new world. I had the pleasure, as I said, of working with many HR practitioners in South Africa and beyond when I led the team that developed the world's first HR standards, which I'm sure many of you will already know and work to. So hence I'm very aware of the many ways an agile HR team or even a single professional can support and guide their fellow management colleagues and their board directors in what is a fast changing world. You will always be seen as the point of reference. It has long been appreciated that an effective HR management system are an essential part of any organisational success. However, it is much less well understood that people can still bring down even the most successful organisation. And experience shows us that if you scratch beneath the surface of an apparently well-run organisation, even today, they can be found to have significant people exposures, often because there is a lack of the necessary knowledge and expertise to manage this complex and very diverse area of risk. Framed by corporate events and challenges from what was the LIBOR rate scandal in the UK, lack of key performance indicators, key risk indicators, and controls on processes, or was it just greed? The BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, back far as Lehman Brothers, the Royal Bank of Scotland, Enron, and today we have British Airways trying to change everybody's contracts, or indeed Wirecard AG from Germany. Last month they had their CEO arrested for fraud, just to name but a few. But perhaps when the outcome of a review into an organisation demise states, and I'm now talking about Carillion, which was a major UK construction giant, when the demise of the investigative board said the business model was an unsustainable dash for cash. So one has to ask the question, where were the competencies of the organisation leaders, or was it just greed with no thought for the people whatsoever? Human resource risk is an all-encompassing element of good governance and effective risk management from top to bottom of all organisations, large and small. And of course, with governments and trying to put in legislation and organisations like the World Health Organization setting examples to address COVID, these can also cause confusion, and indeed through that confusion, risks. You will find that should you go through the 10 sessions, some elements and subjects interweave through all of the 10 sessions. And that's because within that particular discipline subject matter, they are an important part of that aspect. Slides 4 and 5, please, William. Now, you'll see in slide number 4 that we're talking about the VUCA world. That's the volatile, uncertain, complex ambiguity where we find ourselves today. In that first session, we'll address this evolution into a VUCA world by enabling us to understand the detail of this VUCA world and its potential impacts on our working and indeed our possible daily lives. As I said, VUCA describes the increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world we now live in. But of course, HR professionals can address this VUCA world by working with organizational leadership on such matters as communication, reviewing relevant existing policies, rethinking business as usual, because it's not going to be business as usual, is it? Redistributing work where possible, considering future restructuring of organizations, focusing also on remote working. Lots of challenges and nuances are involved. And session 10 of the program will directly address this subject of working at a distance. And it's not just going to be just an issue during COVID-19. Indeed, in many global organizations, it's been happening for some time. Of course, collaboration with others. This situation is unprecedented and there is no blueprint for devising solutions. So when we're collaborating with our colleagues in our value and supply chains, then we really need to make sure they're on board with our principles in terms of our policies and practices. So we will expand on VUCA and its implications in session 1. So that's slide 5, please, William. And on this slide, I've left it in to give you an early insight to show what this is all about and give you some detail around those VUCA words. So if we may, please, William, maybe have slides 6 and 7. Look, the COVID-19 coronavirus is becoming the accelerator for one of the greatest workplace transformations of our lifetime. Human resource management is an integrated function, that comprises a set of activities, planning, acquiring, developing, motivating people towards achieving objectives. Now, there's nothing new in that, but the influencing factors around that are certainly beginning to take a toll on people. But each of these activities, of course, has inherent risks contained within it. If executed properly, Session 2 will look at two HR governance frameworks and discuss the interim HCERM issues. Because people are an integral part of any enterprise risk management program, creative problem solving or organizational commitment that sees individuals going the extra mile, or teamwork that results in high performance, or employee referrals that are able to source out good candidates, for example, to fill future key positions, is a major contributing factor that people need to make when mitigating all or some of our organizational risks. Integrating people risk into your enterprise risk management approach gives a more complete and holistic risk profile. It also allows better risk aggregation and visibility of controls, but most importantly, allows issues related to people to be identified and escalated to levels of management that are best equipped to engage in that situation. Approaches to people-based human psychology and behavioral science have provided great advances in risk management, enabling some people risk to organizations being highlighted during this great period of uncertainty. And they are retention and succession, high reliance on key individuals, underperformance, basic issues like absenteeism, misconduct and fraud. There's a saying, never waste a good pandemic. The naughty people won't be wasting a good pandemic. Liabilities arising from incorrect decisions or actions. This may not be intentional. It's about pressure on your executive teams and the need to make decisions in the real time. So the time is right for people risk post C19 to be centralized, because work and workforces are evolving rapidly. Traditionally, people risk have been treated as separate and managed by a variety of discrete processes overseen by different parts of an organization: health and safety, quality management. Completely eliminating people risk, of course, can't be done. It would mean eliminating people for your organization. But by understanding people risk better, organizations can address the issues they face through a robust and proactive risk management approach. So please, if I may we have slides 8 and 9, please? Thank you. The greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, but to act with yesterday's logic. So scenario planning is about making sure you're prepared for the new normal. Session 3 addresses the impact of the coronavirus on organizations and the new normal for work by presenting 4 scenarios for HR professionals to address and share with their management colleagues at all levels. Scenario planning is a tool designed to help organizations plan for uncertain futures. It has been used extensively by organizations whose performance is vulnerable to major economic, social, political, and environmental shifts. And forward-thinking organizations are starting to plan for that post-COVID world. However, predicting what this world will look like is not going to be easy. We can be reasonably sure that the world will not simply revert to the way it was before the crisis. So the big question is, what will be different? Now, scenarios do not attempt to predict the future, but rather identify a set of possible future states. Scenarios focus on the external driving forces over which individual organizations have little or no control. So this scenario session focuses on the 4 scenarios and presents a working methodology for you to analyze which scenario best suits your organization post-COVID-19. Organizations benefit from scenario planning by imagining how they might compete in each scenario. This process helps them widen their thinking around every possible response and outcomes. We have developed these scenarios to provide organizations with a toolkit to understand the complex landscape that currently surrounds them. The scenarios are intended to raise questions, challenge thinking, and help decision makers test their strategy and underlying assumptions. The end session exercise sets out the methodology for you to follow, which will have detailed explanations for each scenario, and they will be offered ready for the final exercise, including guidance on how to engage in determining which scenarios fit your organization. Of course, it could be a blend of more than one. That is what we need to do. That is why we've gone through the detail of providing 4 scenarios. Please maybe have slides 10 and 11. Thank you, William. Now, this section is about human factors. And human factors refers to environmental, organizational, and job factors. The human and individual characteristics which influence behavior at work in a way which can affect both the individual and the workplace, wherever that may be. In other words, human factors is concerned with what people are being asked to do. That's the task and its characteristics. Who is doing it, the individual and their competency, and where they are working. That is the organization and its attributes. All of which are influenced by the wider societal concerns, both in a local, regional, and national level. Now, as I've said, HR risk management is a systematic approach for identifying and addressing those people factors. Uncertainties and opportunities, that is, that can either have a positive or negative effect on the realization of the objectives of an organization. In this particular session, we will use the EFQM model to address a systematic approach to human factors and cultural change, as well as addressing new COVID-19 related risk factors, such as BOYOD, bring your own device, which I'm sure to work, that is, which I'm sure your cyber and IT colleagues are talking to you about already. But it's how you apply controls, isn't it? So the session looks at HR Risk Management Assessment Framework, that's RAMAF, RMAF, that organizations can apply in the workplace. The session also will address in depth ORIs, Organization Resilience Indicators, Organization and People Resilience Indicators, and how we might bring them under control. Talking about the resilience indicators that have been affected by COVID-19 crisis and which will linger long past the pandemic being brought under control. For example, if you work in an MHI organization, that's a major hazard installation, they play a huge role when addressing health and safety issues. Human factors help optimize performance and reduce human errors. Also PIFs, performance influencing factors, are the characteristics of the job, the individual and the organization that influence human performance in the current environment. We should consider the person factors: physical capability and condition, fatigue, acute from temporary situations or chronic. COVID-19 can leave those who've sadly had it in a poor state of health for months. Stress, morale, work overload or work underload, not enough to do, competence to deal with circumstances which are really beyond their control or have very little control over, work motivation versus other priorities, family. So competency assurance is a necessary component of any approach to reducing human factor risk. So L&D must take a proactive role in assessing competency and certifying competency in all aspects of the new world, even if this is simply ensuring all colleagues are computer literate as a base and that they understand the cyber risk issues that relate to working outside of their main risk workplace. May we have slides 12 and 17, 12 through 17, please, William. Public sector organisations cannot be risk averse and be successful. Risk is inherent in everything we do to deliver high quality service. I'm focusing particularly on slide number 13, where you can see a standard model for managing risk in government organisations. Effective and meaningful risk management in government remains as important as ever in taking a balanced view to managing opportunity and risk. Because then came along COVID-19. And if you can see slide 14, you'll see that it is actually the risk reduction framework from the UK's National Health Service at risk reduction in COVID-19 infection from the workplace, workforce assessment, individual assessment, and how the risk tool can be used. And this is a fair old example of what's had to be done in really short time to manage the COVID-19 outbreak. So at its most effective, risk management is as much about evaluating the uncertainties and implications within options, as it is about managing impacts once choices are made. It is about being realistic in the assessment of the risk to projects, programs, and our everyday working life, and in the consideration of the effectiveness of the actions taken to manage these slides. So if you could put up slides 15 and 16, please, you'll see two examples of how enterprise risk management is portrayed today. However, if we look at the slide enterprise risk management, you'll see that in the middle of the second layer of squares, there's that little box that says HR risk. But in truth, there's risk in every one of those boxes. And it's a human factor risk, because I do not know a risk that does not have a human element. So while risk practices have undoubtedly improved over time across government, the volatility, complexity, and ambiguity of their operating environment has increased, as have demands for greater transparency, accountability for managing the impact of risk, both operational and project as examples. As with all aspects of good risk governance, the effectiveness of risk management depends on the individuals responsible for operating the system put in place. Government departments' risk culture must embrace openness, support transparency, welcome constructive challenge, and promote collaboration, consultation, and cooperation in what is possibly the most complex area of HR risk management, because simply the aspects of day-to-day government activity. And supplier services cooperation. Because of the complexities of government, we need to consider the array of risk categories and how people risk may interact with each. And these can be people risks, or risk arising from ineffective leadership, poor engagement, a suboptimal culture, inappropriate behaviours, the unavailability of sufficient capacity and capability, to industrial action or non-compliance with relevant legislation, HR policies resulting in negative impact on performance because they don't quite address the situation. So we need to be looking across the whole gamut: strategic risk, governance risk, operational risk, legal risk, property risks, financial risks, commercial risk, technology, information security, project program, and of course, reputational risk. Employing people often think, what do I know about this company? What do other people saying about it? Failure to manage risks in any of these categories may lead to financial, reputational, legal, regulatory, safety, security, environmental, employee, customer, and operational consequences. And my government uses a modified version of ISO 31000 called MOR and something called the Orange Book. Very complex piece of detail. In truth, it's just the same as ISO 31000, just focus on government. It's in civil service speak, but in practice, it is not complex, and risk management should not be complex. May we have slides 18 and 19, please? So you'll see in slide 17 and 18, you'll see a standard ISO 31000 model, which can be applied in any scenario or any setting. Now, 18 and 19 slides, please. As I've said, we need really to start to think about talent management. I mean, you start rethinking talent management, frankly. The C-19 pandemic has left even the most prepared and agile organizations scrambling in numerous and previously unimaginable ways. So we need to reflect on how C-19 has blown up, for example, global supply chains. Many organizations have focused on diversifying and adjusting supply networks to reduce risk and salvage some continuity. But are businesses giving the same consideration to the supply of talent? Look, this pandemic underscores the need for fluidity in talent and a seamless flow of knowledge and innovative ideas to enable capability, capacity, and agility. As organizations begin their return to the new normal, shoring up their talent supply chain is going to be a crucial part of mitigating HR risk. So HR executives, if I may suggest, need to be considering some important questions about talent. For example, what skill sets, competencies, and mindsets will be needed to continue to operate, grow, and evolve in a time of what could be continuous disruption? Second, how can we augment our sources of talent to position the organization to meet future needs? Thirdly, where will we turn for quick, trusted access to capability and skills if critical talent is unable or unwilling to return to the normal workplace, or indeed to resume work at all? And this is a factor that we've been addressing in the UK of late. So we turn to the 7 C's of COVID-19 workforce strategy and talent risk, preparing for future unpredictable challenges to thrive in an uncertain and challenging world. And they're exactly what you would expect: change, culture, compliance, cost, capacity, capability, and most of all, connectivity. Because changes to working practices during and post COVID-19 leads to the requirement for redefining and remeasuring performance management, which may prove to be the true disruptive opportunity for post-COVID-19 growth. C-19 imposed mandatory remoteness on us all, quickly obsolete executive truisms like management by walking around, under management's watchful eye, along with the concept of open door policy, strictly out of the window. Disrupted organizations soon learn just how little they know about and how well and how poorly their people and teams work together, and it is becoming very apparent. Virtually every serious organization now grasps that some meaningful, measurable form of real-time monitoring is essential to value orchestration and oversight of remote and flexible working. The changing nature of work and digital transformation all enable and create new demand for novel performance management approaches. Getting performance management right is culturally critical to strategic execution in a rapidly evolving business environment. The future of PM is going to be more data-driven for sure, more flexible, more continuous, and more development-orientated. In truth, it should be focused not just on individual employees, but on core skills and teams. Please may we have slides 20 and 21. Now, change management is not something that is new to you guys. I know this. But in the age of social distancing amid COVID-19, the question is what makes work? Well, what does make work work? And change is hard. And in a crisis like COVID-19, it gets extraordinarily complex. We see employees wrestling with personal challenges, from chaotic working environments from home to unplanned career transitions. Leaders are faced with keeping their workforce engaged and productive while keeping the business running and building for the future. Look, we have a future, we need to be considering it. As leaders, the key to addressing these challenges is to manage change and communicate with empathy. Organizations that take this approach will enable their people to succeed in the most unpredictable environments known and build a stronger, united workforce. Key to engaging in the new world, there is no such thing as over-communicating right now. There are things are changing fast, and leaders must connect with employees at real time, as real people. Candor is especially valuable in everybody's honest radar, because their honest radar is on high alert. Slide 21, please, William. Organizations should home in on what is critical and what can wait when engaging changes to work patterns. A moment of crisis and overload can really highlight how much clutter exists in most everybody's working life. How many tasks we each do every day that are truly not that important. Leaders need to give employees permission to focus just on what is essential to navigating the crisis, including reporting to them just around crucial priorities. Change can be and should be incremental. Changes to policy and even government legislation can also be a risk factor in any organization or country. Simply stated, leaders need to rethink what success looks like in this new situation. In challenging times, when organizations most need the energy of engaged employees, they likely will be constrained by the ability to reward them. HR must ensure your leadership takes a considered approach to show commitment to your people. Please may we have slides 22 and 23, please. Now, again, culture is not a subject that's not new to you, but it is an important part of employees, why they choose to work for an organization and what keeps them there for the long term. More specifically, culture as an organization is exactly what makes employees feel that they fit. So if we're thinking about remote working or not working in the normal workplace, clearly this is an important issue within a workplace, which can affect happiness, motivation, and ultimately productivity. COVID-19 has impacted on culture, and while there remains a certain degree of uncertainty associated with the current pandemic cycle, organisations should take this opportunity to embrace a forward-thinking approach on how they will maintain their culture ongoing. Employee expectations have changed during the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly around flexibility, with many calling for leaders to redefine their approach to management schedules and the blurring lines between homework and commitments. Remote work has become the norm for a while, and we are likely to experience staggered approach to returning to the workplace. Hence, there's potential for some employees to lose their connection with their company's core values and the EVP. Slide 23, please, William. Some organisations are going through a reimaginative phase on a global basis, with work streams, looking at elements including performance standards, remuneration, T&D, and people of all levels of the organisation are involved, and each stream has a strong focus on diversity and inclusion in preparation for major change to the practice of work and the work ethic. However, what is critical is that one size does not fit all. For example, in a sales environment, the loss of team spirit, where collective energy helps deliver results, is a success motivator for productivity. Sales-based businesses are only as good as their pipeline, and lack of mid to long-term visibility invokes nervousness for leaders and stakeholders alike. So the risk and compliance culture, due to changing work environment, it becomes more difficult to control compliant behaviour. Soft controls have become more important than ever before. So measuring HR, we need to consider the risk and compliance measures adjust to the new way of working, that it is clear for people what is expected from them, and they can reach out and discuss in case of any uncertainty. Measuring the risk culture and confront it and act upon it very quickly. Regulation and how people have behaved during COVID-19. Cancel contracts and impact on people, cancel projects, bad communication, and other effects of the crisis. There can be a loss of confidence. It goes without saying that it is important to have an adapted strategy and a clear plan to protect brand integrity. Finally, slides number 24 and 25, please. Succession planning. Look, the current COVID-19 crisis raises all sorts of issues for corporate succession plans. What if the CEO contracts the virus or the CFO is forced to self-isolate? Organisations need to have not only a long-term plan, and I know you all have one, but an emergency backup plan as well. HR should play a leading role in this process, ensuring their organisations have robust and viable succession plans. And there's a positive way you can ensure increased security in what is frankly an uncertain climate. Because a crisis such as C-19 places very unusual strains on the entire leadership team. One contributing factor is the proactive nature of the crisis. Others include the need to completely reorganise the workforce to enable that remote working that we've discussed. Adopting new management practices suitable to a dispersed workforce, and conducting urgent reviews of the business model and strategy. All of these would have to be continuously reviewed as the crisis unfolds. Slide 25, please. This slide wishes to stimulate a discussion around the competency bridges required to prepare for the new normal. Although succession planning is recommended as excellent corporate governance, it is often neglected because it is, for some people, frankly, an uncomfortable subject. Succession planning allows organisations to create caretaker roles. So if you have a plan B, if someone critical to the business suddenly is not around, planning for staffing changes is step one, but creating solid continuity is how you can protect your organisation against the impact of this pandemic in the long run. However, in a time of crisis, it is not uncommon to appoint an interim committee to replace, for example, the Executive Board Committee, and with the powers to act on its behalf. This committee could then manage the succession plan, Again, it will face some legal and governance issues, of course it will. For example, it could be disenfranchised and not with the ExCo or dodge the board's consultation requirement. However, the question nobody wants to ask, and it is a difficult, we face difficult and some sensitive questions. So I'm quite glad we're getting to the end of this session. Organisations with succession plans may opt to fast track the process. And these will be based on perhaps two or a number of key assumptions. And these are examples only. First of all, it would acknowledge the current CEO perhaps cannot successfully take the business forward, either through stresses and strains, poor health, post-COVID-19. Secondly, can the heir apparent, is that heir apparent capable of taking over the post with immediate effect? But of course, this could apply to other executives and board members. So managing people in a flexible scenario. The final episode, the final section of the 10 episodes, 10 sections will deal with this in detail. The period of pandemic is not reflective on normal flexible working, and organisations should take care not to make any decisions around flexible working based purely on this unusual period. However, it's a good opportunity to reflect and consider for effective people management how this may go forward in the future. But of course, this means providing managers with guidance on training and supporting for managing people remotely. And the experience that I've noted over the last few months, that very few managers have that experience. But they're also not checking in on their remote people. So it's becoming a bit of an issue. People are feeling quite lonely and quite distant. So for me, the 10 episodes, the 10 scenarios are, the 10 sessions are focused very clearly on things we need to do today. For example, like moving from 5 days to 7-day working, which allows employees to work some of their physical workplace hours at weekends. But of course, this also can help in minimizing use of public transport, the use of taxis, or even car sharing where applicable. Where employees are concerned, we cannot take enough action today. So please, in closing, and we'll go to Q&A, my final comment, the need for speed is now, because there is no turning back. This is not about just COVID-19, it's about addressing future pandemics as well. Thank you for listening.
We have Emmanuel who said, thank you so much, Dr. Robbins. It has been an insightful session. And Isaac, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Robbins, for the presentation. As a risk measure and to achieve business resilience, we might adopt succession planning to ensure there's business continuity. So how best would you handle the operational succession planning to ensure a ready now pool of staff to take over in the event of a gap? I think that's a question to you, Dr. Robbins.
Can I ask what sort of organization you're from, please? It doesn't tell me on this screen.
All right, Mr. Isaac.
I come from a financial services sector.
Ah,
and, yeah,
right. So,
yes.
Forgive me, speaking
Yes,
over you. So it's a highly technical organization, financial
Exactly.
services, FCA, and all the rest of it. So really, it's about ensuring that you have colleagues who are competent in the disciplines,
Yes.
but also capable of stepping up. So this is about giving people opportunity to shadow the more senior colleagues, to be exposed to practicing the technical elements of financial services. But it's also about putting in place controls, of course, isn't it?
Exactly.
And making sure those controls are well understood in terms of the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, William.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Michael Drop. So don't forget, there's a link we have shared for the registration of the 3-day course. Please use the same link to register.